Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Kinjals in Canada podcast. I can't quite describe why I decided on the name Kinjals in Canada, but I'll come up with a good reason and I'll make sure it's an episode way later down the line. So, today, what I want to cover is, as I mentioned in the last episode, Canadians tend to use very imprecise language, and I think that we need to correct that. I think that there are many steps to correcting it, but the first step for any such issue is to understand the issue. So, today I intend to expand upon the idea, explain how we are not as literate as we could be, and some of the potential causes for that. So, in the case of being a bit less literate, lower level literacy, again, I'm using that specific definition, and to recount, I'm not talking about the ability to read and write at a basic level. I'm talking about high level literacy, a mastery of the English language. So, I can forgive a lower level understanding of English when it comes to a foreigner. It's perfectly fair. But I've noticed that, much to the discredit of native Canadians, it's not really necessary, actually. Native Canadians seem to have a much less advanced vocabulary than a lot of foreigners that I've met. I don't know exactly why that is, but again, the most robust vocabularies I've come across so far are usually foreign born nationals who, for whatever reason, felt some need to master English, or at least have that wide vocabulary. I don't know what their motivations for this are exactly, especially in terms of reading comprehension, but it tends to be true. It might point to what I was talking about, where this seems like sort of a unique Canadian issue. Maybe people from other countries there's more literary culture. There's more reading to understand books, reading to understand concepts, I should say. That could be the case. I don't really know why it is. It might just be to fit better into the economy, to try to be able to communicate better. And of course, I am doing a bit of a disservice here. There are many foreigners who have a really hard time with English and never really figure it out. But I think that for a lot of them, they have already learned a relatively high level of another language, and they might just not feel the need to do it in English because they can already express their thoughts. They can already express their feelings so effectively in their native tongue. Now, with that said, it really makes me think that we've got a serious education problem in Canada because we have national education, we have public schools, and although there are many Catholic schools and many people, especially the ones I know that are more literate, didn't go to public school, we have to keep in mind that Canadian literacy is very much standard across the nation, because we have a very standard curriculum across the nation, not including Quebec. I said the nation. So if our education system isn't bringing our, native people up to a high level of literacy, it's also sort of implicitly dooming them to never being able to understand higher level concepts, which is, seems to me to defeat the purpose of an education, but who am I? That seems to me one of the major contributing factors to this issue. I think partial blame should rest upon the highly specialized nature of our economy as well. We are a relatively young nation with a lack of cultural economics. I don't know how to explain that exactly because, of course, we had the fur trade. We have, maple syrup. That's a part of our economy that you could say is very culturally intertwined with the country, but we don't have those long-standing pubs, for example, that you have in the UK, where they have a pub that it's been around for so many generations. We don't have the generational farms they have in the Netherlands, for example. I know we do have many generational farms, many generational businesses, but nowhere near the same time scale. So what I'm trying to get at here is a point that I learned from Aristotle's Politics. And the point sort of goes like this. Here's how I describe it. As an economy becomes more specialized, individuals in the economy, they tend to learn a more focused set of skills. This bears out in reality, if you take a moment to look around at the people that you work with, it's actually quite easy to see this in your own life, especially once you're aware of it. I didn't notice it myself until I read it from politics, but here it is. If you were to look at a farm boy, for example, easy example to use because we all know a few of them, right? They're incredibly resourceful. They're very reliable, not only because they tend to have lived in more austere conditions during adolescence, but also because they have a less advanced economy to rely on growing up, right? There might not be a plumber, an electrician, something more advanced like a lawyer, doctor. None of those common sort of professional needs that we enjoy in the city might exist in a 100-kilometer radius of the home of a farm boy. So what they need to do to survive is have a basic level of each of those skills themselves. I would say for plumbers, well, yeah, they can do plumbing. Electrician work, yeah, they usually pull that off pretty well. For lawyers, I mean, they have to be able to mediate effectively. They need to be able to discuss things and discuss local laws, at least to some degree. Doctor is a hard one, and that's probably why you do see higher mortality rates out in, rural Canada. But anyways, you find the opposite of this in extremely specialized professionals who are world-class professionals in their trade. But when you find them stuck on the side of the road, unable to change their own tire on their car, you wonder to yourself, how is this guy known across the world for what he does, but can't take off a few lug nuts, swap out a tire, and put them back on? That's really how simple it is. But they get this specialized brain because they've grown up in an economy where they only really need to know one thing. And I think it sort of affects the structure of our brain. I think Aristotle went into that a bit in his book. I don't quite recall. Maybe I'm making that up. Who knows? So the point I'm trying to get at is, well, why would you learn high-level English if it's not going to help you carve out some niche in the Canadian economy? It could just be that our economy is specialized to the degree that you just don't need this as a skill, because you might have some other skill that it's just going to make you that much more money. So this sort of leads me to wonder why, when I look back at history, it seems like there's so many well-educated, fluent, and culturally adept heroes. People that we all can think of. Abraham Lincoln, Napoleon, Ernst Jünger, for one that's a bit more uncommon. A lot of people don't really know about him. But, influential writer, you could say. Old German soldier. I think there's probably a lot of bias when I'm thinking about this. Bias in the form of, when you look back in history, you'll see a lot of people that never made it into the history books. Nothing against them. Obviously, you need to have millions, billions of those people for history to even take place. I'm just saying that I do want to recognize the bias that exists there. Of course, those historical heroes are going to seem incredible because they are incredible, and they've made it into history books by being so incredible. So I'm not trying to disparage the common man by saying, hey, I could only think of these guys in my head. That means that everyone should be like this. That's not what I'm trying to get at here. What I'm trying to get at, rather, is that those historical heroes, well, they seemed to be role models for the men and women around them in their society at the time. And when you look at the leaders today, they, either by intention, because we live in a democracy, so, maybe they mean to win their political popularity contest of the day, they're just trying to appeal to a wider audience, or by lack of ability, they seem to fail to express even simple concepts at a compelling level. This does appear less prevalent in, candid conversations when they're just one-on-one with a reporter, or they're talking with one of their personal friends and it just happens to be recorded. So maybe they're dumbing themselves down to win at quote-unquote democracy, right? Which sounds a bit silly. I do mean to say they want to win at an election, of course. So the question I mean to ask is, are we seeing a compounding effect of a highly specialized economy and a democratic system? Are we seeing the results of Those two things together, and are they making each other worse? Well, they very well could be. If being a master of the English language isn't worth much, then it could only be that the value is in the ability to create linguistic art, right? If you're writing poems, writing scripts for whatever media, movies, shows, or leaving money aside, leaving the economy aside for a second, maybe the value is in leading people, becoming leaders in our lives. To the former, to the value of art, if the art is dull and base, by intention to appeal to the widest audience, which I don't think I need to go too far into. I mean, you look at any shows nowadays, they're really quite simple. Sometimes they're very fun, sometimes they're great, but they're awfully simple. Then all we have left to look at is the leadership aspect. The art is already intentionally simple so that it can make the most money, right? Makes sense. Can't blame production studios for wanting to make more money with their product. I mean, it's what they do to make a living. And as a quick aside, I won't even consider hobbyism. I won't consider the widespread hobby of wanting to master English. There's not many people that actually want to master any language just because it's fun or interesting. There's some that you can find online. I'll think of an example here. Let's see. Oh yeah, Jackson Crawford. Now that's a guy with an amazing voice, first off. And his work is excellent. If you have any interest in sort of pagan history, Norse pagan history specifically, he's actually a PhD in the subject, and wonderful videos. Definitely check him out if you have an interest in that. Anyways, those people are few and far between, and that's actually a rare example of somebody who is so good at that hobby that he turned it into a business. He makes money doing it. I highly doubt that it's his primary source of income, but all I mean to say is that those people are so rare, it's not worth considering. That's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about you as an individual and the society that you live in, how you can affect it. Individuals like that, it's just too rare. So I want to look at the more widespread value, something that's more relevant to how you could actually affect your own nation. And with that said, back to the subject of leadership. Leadership specifically in an unlimited democracy, that is to say, a democracy in which everyone can vote. Everybody above a certain age can vote, and of course, if you are not a certain level of unacceptable villain, you know, in America they have felons, in Canada we have very, very low amounts of limitations on who can vote, just is my point. We're essentially an unlimited democracy. So I think that sort of is a way that we shoot ourselves in the foot, because it can't be reasonably expected that the general populace is going to have a very high level of literacy for reasons discussed before. And this compounds that issue. It sort of forces politicians to dumb down their language when they're speaking to large crowds with the intent to, gain votes, win elections, win hearts and minds, kiss babies. If these men and women are considered leaders in our nation, they're also in a position where they are a natural role model. You sort of look towards politicians as role models, whether or not you even like the political system. It's just natural that people in your nation who are in charge, well, you're going to think of them as highly valuable. It makes sense, right? They hold, at least to some degree, a monopoly of force in your nation. They're the ones that can make the big changes. That's important. And I think that because of that individual importance, you're going to see children looking up to these people. And we all know how incredibly impressionable young minds are. I would even go so far as to say that we've all been young once, and further presume that we've grown beyond believing in what was once impressed upon us. Like the North American house hippo. You know what I'm talking about. This could be a part of the reason why Canada has a collectively low level of literacy. I think that all of those factors together play on each other and make us worse overall. But that's all I really have on the subject for now. I can't think of much else. Within a few episodes, I'm intending to expand upon the idea of how to improve literacy. both personally and on a broad scale. So if you as an individual improve your literacy, you'll always be able to reach more people with your words. That's just a fact of the matter. But if we can't bring the country up with us, around us, there's really no point. Your words will fall on too many deaf ears. Not everyone isn't listening, but enough people are not listening that it just won't matter. So get interested. Definitely get interested in the collective well-being of your nation. It's extremely important. Stop telling yourself it's not, and stop telling other people it's not. That sort of crabs in a bucket mentality is going to keep all of us down for much longer than it needs to. We've got an amazing opportunity here in Canada. It's a beautiful country. We have so much land. We have so many natural resources to exploit, to use, and to do good with. Anyways, that's it for now. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. Have a good one.